What's up, everybody? Happy game day, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. And today's episode of Locked On Vikings is presented to you by Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on entry. First-time users get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. So, today's a bit of a weird day. We got a Monday morning, and the Vikings haven't played yet. So, instead of trying to wait till the end of the game or whatever, I figured let's just do a mailbag. Since tomorrow usually is Twitter Tuesday, but we'll be breaking down the game tomorrow. Let's do the mailbag today. So I have a Twitter Tuesday mailbag for you. But first things first, I guess we should go over the injury report. Pretty clean on both sides. Basically nobody on the Eagles injury report all week. They had a lot of rest days. They've got a lot of older players that, but it all seemed planned. And the Vikings, the only loss that they have right now is Andrew Booth is out with a quad injury, the injury he suffered. And this was like the second special teams play in week 1 against the Packers. So no Andrew Booth, although he's probably not the guy that comes in for like cornerback depth anyways. So he's just a special teams role anyways. It's going to be that. I think it's a redshirt year for him based on the little bit that I saw of him in camp and preseason. Probably a redshirt year for him anyways. So whatever. And then you've got a couple people that were like playing through small things, and Patrick Peterson missed a practice. Turns out that was a personal reason. So not a lot to worry about. One out player, and it's Andrew Booth. He'll be inactive, and that will be that. So reasonable bill of health. All that's very great. Gosh, I just watched the end of like all of the Sunday action, and I just wanted to be like, lol Bears. But this isn't Locked On Bears. This is Locked On Vikings. So let's, Locked On Bears is probably delicious right now, though, if you wanted to go. Listen to Lauren Cope. Probably not. Lauren's pretty realistic. So instead, let's do the mailbag. Now, we do still get a good amount of Eagles previewing here, Vikings-Eagles previewing in this mailbag because y'all had a bunch of questions about it. So let's dive in. If you have a question for me, you can send it to me at any time at Locked On Vikings or at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. You can always send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. There's also a Google form in the show notes that you can fill out, or leave a YouTube comment. I will see your YouTube comment, and if you have questions for me, I'll try to reply to you, or maybe just make it into a Twitter Tuesday question. So let's begin with Eric the Red, who asks, how do you stop JJ? What is the Achilles heel of the Cooper Kupp role? So I think of this question schematically, mostly because my brain's in a very schematic place lately as I'm starting to learn like the McVay scheme and all that other stuff. But the answer schematically, there are a whole bunch of people, including Honest NFL, which is a fantastic Twitter account. If you're on Twitter, follow Honest NFL. He used to work with the Eagles. He covers mostly the Eagles. But he's like an anonymous former staffer person that just divulges awesome information, just really helps bridge that gap between actual teams and people like you and me that don't have that, only really have what we can see on TV. I love that account. And a couple other people, Coach Vass, if you know him, have said Zeus 18 would be the coverage call. So basically, the layman's term of this is have a safety over top of him at all times. Bracket him, double cover him. Somebody's over the top of him, somebody's underneath him. Kirk will never be able to throw it. No matter how good Justin Jefferson is, you can't throw that ball. It gets intercepted before it even gets to him. So then you'll have to learn to move somewhere else. But if you want to know Zeus 18 a little bit more intimately, I'm going to put a screenshot up on the screen here. This is from Honest NFL. And essentially, it's really similar. The Eagles do a really similar scheme to what the Vikings run. It's called, it's a quarter, half. And Zeus is the call that basically means put the half side of the coverage on the next part of the call. So if it's Zeus left, that means half side left. Zeus right, half side right. Zeus 18 means put the half wherever Justin Jefferson is. And so he'll always be going against a half safety. So there's always going to be a safety over top. Half safeties are the safest ones. That's the one that is going to be backing way off, the one that's always going to be over the top of whatever Justin Jefferson is doing. And if Jefferson goes across the field and he gets into the quarter part of it, well, there's two safeties over there. You're going to have somebody deep picking up just about any kind of deep post or any sort of like spear route or anything like that. And the coverage, essentially, no matter where Justin Jefferson goes, he will always be doubled. I would expect to see this in this Monday night game. I would expect Jonathan Gannon to put the half side on Justin Jefferson's side a lot. And then what that means, though, is because that's devoting a lot of schematic resources, you're going to have a lot of, you heard it on the broadcast if you watched the Packer game on TV, a lot of umbrella coverage is what they called it, but those guys like way back, you're going to have a lot of that. So you're going to have a lot of underneath and one-on-one opportunities for the Adam Thielens, the KJ Osbornes, the Irv Smiths, even Dalvin Cooks. There will just not be enough resources to really stymie those guys if you're going to live in this Zeus call all the time. Yeah, it will stymie Justin Jefferson, and then we kind of find out what everybody else has. And the Packers did not do that kind of thing. They kept quarters and half safeties over on his side a lot, but they would really zone things off, and they didn't do as much zone matching. And they allowed a little bit too much. They also just like busted coverages all the time, and they had all kinds of mistakes and everything. And they allowed like one-on-ones with Eric Stokes too. So the Vikings didn't really have to test pushing any of those other buttons. They just kept pushing the Justin Jefferson button, and it got 184 yards. If the Eagles live in this call, it will be a little bit harder to do that. And they'll have to lean on the other players. So we'll really see how we didn't see if Adam Thielen or KJ Osborne or Irv Smith have any juice because we didn't need to. This time we probably will need to, unless Jonathan Gannon is really stupid, which, my goodness, if you listen to Eagles fans, maybe, because they are way down on him right now. And that's actually going to come up in the rest of this mailbag, which we will get to. But first, let me talk to you about Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made a little easier. I don't like having to build a full lineup for daily fantasy, which makes Prize Picks absolutely perfect for me. PrizePicks.com is a place where you can pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, win up to 10 times your money on any entry. So Justin Jefferson, more or less than 184 yards, that kind of thing. Normal numbers for him. You can also play with college football. You could have played with WNBA, by the way, congrats to the Aces. You can play boxing or cricket, like all kinds of stuff, NASCAR, whatever. And it is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That means if you deposit $100, Prize Picks adds another $100 on top of it. You deposit 50, you get 50, and so on. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you want a little bit more in-depth content, you can check out my Patreon, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. If you would like to go relive all of the Justin Jefferson catches, or why did Kirk Cousins check that down and stuff. A little bit more of an academic environment, a little bit more curious, less judgmental, to sort of quote that one Walt Whitman quote that I know from the Ted Lasso scene. It's a bit of a slower environment for us to really get together and learn, and I'm very proud of what that's turning into. Also, you should be able to get everything for free unless you want it right when it comes out. Then you can join me on patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Okay, moving on with this Twitter Tuesday mailbag. Next one is from Magic Skullbus, who says, is Ed Donatell's defense one where we use a spy on a mobile QB like Hurts? Is a Fangio-style defense either extremely strong or weak to this style of QB? So extremely strong or weak is probably going to be more personnel dependent. No to a spy. Probably not to a spy, I guess. Somebody else asked that question, like, would we spy a QB by like Hurts? I don't think that's a great idea. I think a QB spy is a bit of a nuclear option. That's what like the Lions should have done as Hurts was like shredding them. They probably could have deployed a spy, but like Michael Vick always loved it when defenses would put a spy on him because that's one more guy out of the coverage. And it's like they're blitzing, but you don't have to change your protection. Like a spy is a really, really costly thing to do. And it doesn't even really like work all that often because that guy still has to chase him down and tackle him. And what if, Hurts jukes and now we missed and now you spent that guy for nothing? There's a lot of other paces you can go through before you get to a spy. In particular, what your rush lanes are and how disciplined your players are at those rush lanes is going to determine it a lot more. When you say play contain, a lot of you watch most pass rushes, somebody's playing contain, even against non-mobile quarterbacks, because you want to choke off those escape lanes. The Vikings under Zimmer were always phenomenal at this, especially against Aaron Rodgers. And it's why Aaron Rodgers, if you look at his stats versus every team, he was always way less efficient versus those Zimmer teams than he was everywhere else, because they were so good at choking off those escape lanes, and he wouldn't be able to escape and run around and do his improv magic nearly as often. But that was just like that. A lot of times Zimmer wouldn't even blitz him. It was just a discipline thing. And I think you have to do the same thing on this end, is just whatever your rush plan is, make sure you account for what the escape lanes are, and nobody be a hero, nobody be greedy, everybody be where you're supposed to be. And then a lot of times that comes down to, can Dalvin Tomlinson get a push against your right guard? And that'll be tough against Philly because they have a really good offensive line. But that's going to kind of be the question that this comes down to. And if that stuff starts falling apart, then you can start taking guys out of a coverage and have them spy. And then you adjust the coverage to kind of replace that guy the same way you would in a blitz, which is a gigantic conversation that we'll have to save for another day. But that's, I guess, the way that I would do it. But I wouldn't start pulling the QB spy lever until things are going really wrong. I would want to try a less costly way first. Marcus Miller asks, should we be worried about the Vikings' run defense in general and not just against the Dillon/Jones last week and Hurts/Sanders tomorrow? Maybe, but it feels a little bit. So the Vikings, a lot of the run plays that they gave up were light boxes. And check me on this if you have Sports Info Solutions or something, because this is an anecdotal observation. I didn't track it or anything. But I just noticed that a lot of times, oh, wow, it's just that there's always a safety coming down to insert really late, and then it would be a 7 or 8 yard run. But in exchange, they basically never got to go deep. So that's a decision you're making on purpose that goes, yeah, run the ball all you want. If you can't get explosives through the air, it won't matter because you can't win this game 4 yards at a time. And that's a pretty standard Fangio idea, which is, lighten the box, spread everything out, make it so you can't throw. And essentially, think about how upset you probably were about how often Mike Zimmer offenses ran the ball. They ran the ball too much and were losing games because of it. Force them to be that. And that's the idea. And if that means they have a relatively successful run game and they take the bait and they want to run a little more, we're going to be all right with that. That's, I guess, the analytic argument toward doing this. But it also works it's just worth it, especially if you have safeties like Harrison Smith, and Bynum did really well at this, and they drafted Lewis Cine to be good at this, who, by the way, he will make his debut on Monday night here. If you have safeties that can insert really fast, that can get downhill in a hurry and get in part of that run fit, even though they lined up on the roof, then you can get away with that a little bit more. But you are just going to give up more yards in the run, and you're just going to be okay with that. It's just a bargain that they've made, but very much on purpose. And it's just a drawback of the design that you take in exchange for what it gives you. Get quacking. Concerned? No. Do I expect it to get better? No, but it's the bargain. Get Quacking asks, how bad is the Bradbury Davis matchup going to be? Man, I thought it was going to be awful, but I guess he just doesn't play. It was the weirdest thing. I guess he only played a third of the snaps, and it's wild. That's even less than he played at Georgia, which it already was a thing at Georgia. So I don't know if it was a conditioning thing or if it just happened to be the fronts. The Lions were chasing the game a lot, so they were in a lot of pass-only situations, and maybe you take Jordan Davis off the field for that. I don't know, but if they can get Jordan Davis one-on-one with Bradbury, that's a problem, and the goal with setting your protection should probably be to prevent specifically that, and then that means you have to trust Christian Darrisaw against Brandon Graham, or Brian O'Neill against, not Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat. Derek Barnett's on IR. But you have to trust those matchups to win one-on-one. And I think I'm okay taking my chances there, but decent enough chance the Eagles try to deny that and say, no, let's get Jordan Davis one-on-one with Garrett Bradbury. And there's going to be a bit of a chess match in the trenches there, as there always is. There's with everybody center too. That's not unique to Bradbury. Dan Brandt asks, did you notice or feel Kirk Cousins had a much different cadence to his snap count? I noticed it, and it seemed to almost catch the defense off guard a lot more often. I did not notice that. I didn't look for it or anything. I'll look out for it now. Maybe they were trying to hard count a little bit more often. Maybe that's what you noticed. Or maybe they just changed his cadence for timing's sake or something. That's something that, a new offensive coordinator might want to do, just so that things time out with motion properly. It's sort of arbitrary whether you do a cadence one way or another. It's whatever you're comfortable with and whatever times out with the way, with like where somebody needs to be in their motion when you snap and all that stuff. But so maybe I didn't catch it, but I'll keep an eye out. Or an ear out, I guess. Jimothy asks, would you rather have Tua at his contract or Kirk with his contract quarterback this team? So I don't have a great answer to this. I'll tell you right now, like I don't have a great Tua opinion. I don't really know. I haven't watched enough of him to really have a good opinion. A lot of the discourse says that he's not very good. He did score 6 touchdowns against the Ravens. A lot of those were coverage busts and Tyreek Hill doing Tyreek Hill things. So I don't know how much credit you want to give or whatever. And I only really saw what I saw that game on Red Zone. I'm going to just step out of that one. I'd be out of my depth. But what I'll tell you is this. I don't care about the contract. I refuse, especially at quarterback. I'm uncomfortable with it at every position. Getting worse to get cheaper, I'm uncomfortable with that. The goal is to win games, not to have cap space. And you can't put cap space on the field. And so getting cheaper at quarterback, if it means I get worse, that money is not going to make up a difference at the quarterback position. It's way too important of a position to skimp. That is not the place to skimp. And going from Kirk to Tua would be skimping. Now, if you think Tua is better than Kirk, well, then of course, right? I don't know. But it to me, who is the better quarterback? Screw the money. We'll make the money. We'll figure out the money. Who's better at the sport? That's what I want. Bradley Knorr asks, what are your thoughts on the Lions having another 30-plus point game? Oh, boy, the Commanders looked like a mess in that game, didn't they? Whew. It's really rough. They sure did run down their throats, though. DeAndre Swift looks great. They've got a heck of a run game there, and Jared Goff was slinging it. Yeah, maybe they got an offense. They apparently don't have a defense. They might just be living in this shootout world. Week 3 will be very interesting. Which leads me to Cole Carter, who asks, will we be favored for the Lions game? Opening line for that, as I say it right now, is Vikings favored by 7.5. So almost certainly they will be favored for the Lions game. It would take one heck of a 38-7 disaster for the Vikings to in this Monday night game for the Vikings to not be favored over the Lions, because that line was set after their game against the Commanders. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Speaking of crossing bridges, you need a car to do that. And to get that car, go to Turo. Turo is a car sharing marketplace. You can go to Turo.com and book any car you want wherever you want it and from a community of local hosts. So ditch the boring rental car thing and instead go to Turo. You can get an SUV or a minivan, or you can test drive something fun, or even just something on a budget. You can try like an electric vehicle, and if you want to take a look at that, every trip also is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. So once again, ditch that boring rental car and find your drive at Turo.com. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday mailbag. Next one comes from Purple Kool-Aid, who says, are the Chargers proof that even if the Vikings had a franchise QB, we'd still be the Vikings? So the Chargers are proof of two things. If you missed the Thursday night game, by the way, it went like every other if you've ever seen a Chargers game, that happened again. So the Chargers are proof of two things. One, there is a God. Two, that God hates the Chargers. It just has to be. Even the moments, like there are moments the Chargers had that like they deserve to lose that game, right? But I mean, gosh, you've got Justin Herbert on a sprained rib or something, coming out, throwing a touchdown that actually gets them back into like onside, and maybe you have the game or a chance to win the game. Like a crazy comeback effort, absolutely the guttiest thing in the world. But also the cardinal rule of every Chargers game is that they don't start until there's 2 minutes left on the clock, or maybe 4 minutes left on the clock. Every Chargers game just doesn't start until then. Whatever has happened before then, by 4 minutes on the clock, that game will be something worth watching. Nothing else in Chargers games matters. But if the Vikings had a franchise QB, they would still be I mean, you could argue they've had the same quarterback for like 4 years. Of course, he's a franchise QB. Whether you want him to be the franchise QB is one thing, but like he's been the dude this is year 5 of him, right? Yeah, I had to count on my fingers real quick there. Live stream draft viewers know what I'm talking about. 1991 Ford Tempo enthusiasts. I guess I didn't answer the question. Would we still be the Vikings? Nominally, yes. We would not change names, so yes, we would still be the Vikings. 1991 Ford Tempo enthusiast asks, looking at our current talent and free agent situation, what do you see being our positions of need next offseason? This is such a tough question to answer like week 2. I'm always going to be jumping the gun, but you are asking me to jump the gun, so let's just do it. Center will be a big draft thing, I think. They're not going to re-sign Bradbury. They'll let him walk. They just won't have a center. And it won't even be like do we stick with our guy or not? Like they'll just draft one. And it's supposed to be a good class in 2023. So that's probably the plan there. I think their safety thing is solved. I think they have the heir apparent for Harrison Smith. And once Smith retires, it'll be Seen and Bynum. I think that's the plan as it stands right now. So I don't think that's one. You could always use a receiver. You could always use a corner. It's pretty much always on the list. There's never a bad time for that. Maybe a tight end if they don't want Irv Smith. Irv Smith's in a contract year, so you're either, I guess you would call it a need, and maybe that need is filled by extending Irv if that's what you wanted to do, but they'll need a tight end there. And that probably, I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch of stuff. You might want some more help on the edge, some depth. You might want another linebacker if you're not happy with Jordan Hicks or Brian Asamoah. But if players work out the way they're supposed to, it might be a little bit more of like a let's get depth and run it back kind of thing. If they are happy with the result. Now, if they end up going 7-10 this season, then you're probably going to be thinking about making some bigger sweeping changes. But probably center and tight end, and then corner and wide receiver are kind of always on the list. That'll be my answer there. Brandon says the Bengals speaking of tight ends, cut Thaddeus Moss. And he was on LSU with JJ. Could the Vikings pick him up for the practice squad at least? Of course, Randy's son. No, you probably don't want that. I don't think he should be on an NFL team, and I don't think he has been on an NFL team outside of the practice squad. I don't think he's been I don't think he's made a team properly. Like maybe he's gotten an elevation or something and gotten in a game here or there. But off the top of my head, I don't think he's a rosterable player. So I'm good there. I would rather have the tight ends we have. Even on the practice, I'd rather Brandon Dillon. I don't want him. As nostalgic and emotionally cool as it would, if we had him, I'd be like, that's neat and I like it as a fan, but I don't think he's a very good idea. Pokemon Success Enthusiast says, what is the most scandalous thing Kirk Cousins might get caught liking on Twitter? So I believe this is a reference to Doc Rivers. If you want to go onto Twitter and look at Doc Rivers likes, just make sure you do it in an environment where your boss can't look over your shoulder and you can't get in trouble for looking at something a little racy. All right. I believe that's all still up. But so Kirk Cousins is an unreasonably wholesome person, right? He's a super evangelical, straight button down. He's a buttoned up guy. So I don't think he would get scandalous likes like that unless he starts a Senate campaign, in which case all bets are off because state Senate, especially the side I think he'd run on, is known for such scandals. All bets would be off. But I think right now, the most scandalous thing Kirk Cousins might get caught liking is horrible grilling advice or horrible culinary advice. We know Kirk Cousins has had multiple pictures of his grilling work go online and get absolutely roasted, and deservedly so. And I think he would maybe like some real bad stuff. That's what I think the most scandalous thing is. Purdy Lives asks, if the Vikings ever had a replication of the movie Invincible, who was it? Okay, so the movie Invincible, you might remember that one. Mark Wahlberg, he's a walk-on for the Eagles. So the one that immediately comes to everybody's mind would probably be Adam Thielen, but I don't think it's Adam Thielen because we need somebody that walked on on an open tryout. And to do that, you got to go way back to the 60s. And specifically 1964. A railroad worker comes in to fill out training camp because they still didn't have enough bodies to fill out training camp. So they were pulling in bartenders and whoever they could find. Guy working in a railroad in Arizona, sweltering heat in the summer, decides, I'll go out for the team. And he actually makes it. And that guy's name was Lonnie Warwick. And he was a Viking linebacker for 10 years and played behind most of the Purple People Eaters. He retired ultimately in 1975. That's got to be the one. Dude comes off a railroad and has a 10-year career, right? Better than the guy in Invincible did, so an even better story. Drew Lock Enjoyer says, please explain the metaphysical correlation between the state of the Rocky statue and the Eagles' performance in detail. So here's the thing. If you weren't online after the 38-7 game, I don't blame you. But so a lot of fans were like palling around the stadium before the game, and they were like doing skull chants everywhere around Philly. They've like filmed one in front of the Rocky statue. They've got a statue of like Sylvester Stallone, and they like put a scarf and a little towel that had a 14 that looked like Diggs jersey on him. This was an unforgivable sin, and a lot of people are still mad about it to this day somehow. They're like, you vandalized the statue, which is hilarious because there was no, like, you take the scarf down and it's over. Like, people probably took the scarf down before they left because you don't want to leave your scarf. But like that, they've been mad about it forever. And so whenever you hear like people who still will reply like 38-7 to any Vikings thing, which there are still people out there, it's amazing. They are probably just still mad about their Rocky statue. It's like nigh religious. It's buck wild. So I guess if the Rocky statue is vandalized, but in a way that's not enough to damage it, but only enough to make Philly fans angry, I guess they blow us out again. But I wonder what would happen if you Saddam'd that thing. Not that I would ever encourage anybody to commit acts of vandalism. Please do not encourage acts of vandalism. But I don't know. It's all theoretical, you know? Purple Drank asks, when the Vikings and Bills inevitably meet each other in the Super Bowl this season, love it, which cursed team will break their curse? Or will we both be so cursed that instead of our curses canceling out, they double and we end up in a tie? Okay, so the Bills' energy is their vibes are way too good, so I'm sorry they're getting it. They're also better. They're insane. So their energy is just way too positive. And so they're getting the monkey off their back. But this is very similar to the last Super Bowl the Vikings played in, because the Raiders hadn't won one either, and they had all sorts of playoff heartbreak and terrible stuff, and they had lost. I think they had lost a Super Bowl. They had lost a whole bunch of AFC championships to like the Steelers and Dolphins in the earlier parts of the 70s. And a whole bunch, they lost on the Immaculate Reception, right? Like they had all sorts of heartbreak, and the Vikings had all their own heartbreak, and both of these teams were coming in like someone's getting the monkey off their back, and then the Raiders obviously did. So we've been there before. I think the Bills get it, though. They just feel like the league's protagonist this year a little bit more than we do. I hope you all enjoy the game. All right. Stay safe. Be kind. Love you all. We will talk about this on the other side. Of course, we have the postcast after the game. If you want to listen to me and Sam Ekstrom immediately afterwards, you can find it on the Locked On Vikings YouTube channel, where you're either watching this or if you're listening to this, go to YouTube. You can find that. You usually find the audio up a little bit later in the night, too, on this podcast feed. Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel. Not the Locked On Vikings one, but Locked On Minnesota Sports, separate YouTube channel. It's the same one you'd find the Minnesota Football Party on. You can find me and Sam breaking down the game for like 10 minutes or so live right after triple zeros. And then I will, of course, have podcast up Tuesday morning, recapping whatever horrors we're about to witness. I hope you all enjoy the game. Love you all. See you soon. And as always, Skol.